Sure.
So we can make sure that people at home or people at work that can't join us will be able to see what's going on. And of course, now I'm choking up, so bear with me. It's allergy season in Oklahoma.
Oh no. The best of times and the worst of times.
It is short, but it's definitely green country. So, so here we are for shared vision. But before we talk about shared vision specifically as a whole and the efforts around there, let me just give you a little bit of an update. So, first off, just keep in mind as we talk about this, everything is still a draft and we're still working out some stuff. So talking to when I say the ESHIP team, I'm referring to Christine, myself, Andy, and Lauren Higgins. Enoch has some parts in it, but Enoch is kind of transitioning off and working on other things. So that said, we've taken some of the input. We have not really delved as deeply into the synthesizing. We thought that that's what we would be spending June on, is synthesizing all the information that came out of ESHIP. Well, before we get there, there's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to be addressed in how we move forward before we can kind of put some structure around it. So initially, Andy and I had spoken about having these calls, these working group calls, revolving around the people that have already been in the community and been on some calls through the month of June, getting some input on what they feel this call should be as we move forward, whether it's a check-in thing, whether it's a project-focused call, whatever this happens to be, and getting some input. And then I was going to put together a survey and send it out to all of you so that each one on each respective goal call, because what you need for goal 3 may be very different from what's needed on goal 7. So we were going to get that input and then adjust these calls. In discussion, as it's bubbled up, it seems like some of the best things that we can do is probably to end up with 2 calls per goal, and 2 calls, which is what we were just talking about, Peter, before you joined us. So the current idea is if we have a working group call that is specifically, so this call becomes a goal call. So whatever level of interest, whatever level of knowledge, if you're interested in ESHIP calls, you can come onto these calls and talk about the subject and ideas and exchange things that are happening in your community and share with others, just a community of practice. And then have another call, which is more of a project focused. This is what efforts we're working on, because as Andy and Victor shared at the summit, there is not specifically for mission and vision, but there are some there's an RFP process that's looking at some support. The RFP initiatives, the formula that we're discussing is an initiative plus a community of practice, like ecosystem building practitioners, plus a national resource provider equals a pilot program. And we're working on getting national resource providers like other foundations, people or organizations that have some kind of structure, probably more nonprofits, but also including for-profit organizations that can house those ideas. The reason that all of those elements are needed for these initiatives is if you don't have an idea, then it's just a bunch of people sitting around talking about a project, right? Or a possible project. If you don't have the ecosystem building practitioners, then you don't have the boots on the ground people who are working on these things to be able to know whether whether there's a customer for it, right? Product market fit and customers for the project and validating the concept. And then a national resource provider would be an organization so that it can be and um, scaled and sustainable, because usually what happens is, you fund an idea and it's only as good for that length of funding, and it needs to live on past the ESHIP summits and all of that. So that's why all three should be part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
That's in our mind, and this was predating ESHIP, the discussions that Christine and I introduced when we first started talking about these things. So to Louisa's question, if the foundation, now first of all, a foundation, even the Kauffman Foundation, cannot support all these initiatives. We need to have support from other organizations. So it can't just be Kauffman, and these are not the Kauffman ESHIP goals, right? This is the information, and Kauffman is a convener. So that being said, trying to bring in more people and more resources in order to move this forward is what we're working on. There's still working out what this RFP process looks like for some of the initiatives specific to Goal 3, like a mission, a vision, is not so much a funding ready project, but something that the community needs to think about. So I'm glad that the three of you were on the call to talk about, to think through, and then Peter and Danny and Dara have said that that they would work towards continuing the discussion that started at the summit. Louisa and Hassan have been involved in discussions prior to the summit about what mission and vision looks like. So I think all of you, and what I'll do is put all of you on an email together so that you can figure out how you want to work on this and invite other people to do that. So that's what I've got right now. There will be an email going out to the attendees just to share and follow up and talk about how we feel going forward, and get feedback and input from all of you, and we'll go from there. So that's a lot of information. I've done a lot of talking now. Some thoughts, ideas, input from the three of you.
Yeah, there was like an initiative under this goal that was like a living dictionary. I think that I mean, in my opinion, is funding ready. I don't know if if anybody else has taken a look at it, but that's the. Can I take this call really quick? I will literally be right back. Okay.
Peter, Hassan, either of you have something to share?
No, I mean what you lay out sounds good. I mean, I don't recall. I mean, I'm just new to this working group, so I'm not. I was part of the mission vision discussion at the ESHIP conference and sort of morphed into this side of it. So I'm not so up to date as Louisa is on what's potentially fund ready, or what's even meant by a dictionary. But I think that what you're talking about in terms of further refining what we started to work on there makes a lot of sense, and doing some sort of shared document process. I don't know if you want to go to something like some of these shared resource places as a way to do it, or you want to work on using Google Docs, which I think is pretty clunky, but at least it's what most people find accessible as a way of sort of combining ideas, getting comments on documents and so forth. I'm amenable to all that. I don't know, Hassan, do you have anything else?
So I kind of agree with Louisa. I think the Living Dictionary is probably the one of the 4 initiatives that's probably closest to funding ready. But everything you said, I agree with, Celia, as far as how these calls should go forward.
Okay, so that's good. So I think mission, vision, values, outcomes, those are things that are probably an exercise that that if the several of you take a stab at it, kind of like what we did with the playbook is what I envision, where you take a stab at it and you post it and it's open for comments and people can chime in and keep curating that. I think what Louisa said was correct in that when we were having these discussions, like a living dictionary of terminology that we use, so that we use the same terms in the same ways. There's a Facebook discussion going on right now between Del Gines and Valto and several other people talking about just the term ecosystem builder, right? Or ecosystem building. Hey, Louisa.
Hey,
Welcome
sorry
back.
about that.
No, you're fine.
I told him not to call me. But
so
okay.
the whole living dictionary thing
Mhm.
is something that can be supported.
Okay.
Probably what we'd have to figure out is, what do you need for that, right? Like, how does that become a thing?
Right. And we put it
So
on that one big sheet. We outlined the needs. I can't remember exactly what they were, but they were on that sheet.
So what we're looking at, looking to do with, and what I was sharing with Peter was, and Hassan, was the mission, vision, values, or outcomes. Seems like it's a document like we did with the ESHIP Summit playbook, right? Where there's a draft and then people comment on it, and then you take the input and you decide how to modify and structure and edit that thing, and it becomes something that is worked on throughout the year and then presented at the next conference. Is what I feel like. That's right, that it seems like an open document with everybody. So that can all live in the dashboard. What we are thinking about doing is taking that template that was done at the ESHIP Summit and posting those on the dashboard, the community dashboard that we currently have, so that everyone can see. So the idea of the dashboard and these phone calls is visibility, so everyone knows what's going on. Alignment, so that we can work in tandem and not overlap, duplicate, and conflict. Then hopefully there's coordination, so you can see where things move together and who's working on what. And then sometimes on some initiatives there's different renditions of an idea. And sometimes those renditions can fuse together, and sometimes they just work alongside each other. And so that visibility and alignment helps with that coordination. Then the big hope is that there's collaboration, and sometimes there isn't collaboration. And so those are the varying levels of the 4 things that we're working on and working towards. So that's the kind of the structure that we're trying to put together to support these efforts. So visibility, alignment, coordination, collaboration, probably in that order. And so Peter was suggesting, and this has come up on a couple of calls, about how the process moves forward, whether or not there's use of a project management tool, Asana, Trello, Basecamp, Google Docs, which everybody says is clunky, but as Peter pointed out, very much more accessible for a lot of people. They're used to working on it. And I don't know what that is. There was a question on whether or not the Kauffman Foundation uses one. There is not one to date that I know of that's used by the whole foundation or even parts of the foundation. To have 30 plus initiatives live in one is hard to mandate, right? Because groups are going to form, they're going to do their own thing. It would be nice to have them work on the same tool, because as something in collaborative culture aligns with something in the global awareness program for universal support, as those things align, if you're on two different platforms, it's really hard to merge, right? Or to work in coordination with each other. That being said, if you're wanting something, yes?
So, I mean, I've been working on a project with a consortium of states through the National Governors Association, and we have 5 working groups in that. I think it's 4 or 5. And that's part of this. And we've been using Basecamp because you can have a separate Basecamp for each working group. But then it's under the umbrella of a single account, and you can turn on or off what people can see and not see. So that so we have a sort of a private Basecamp group that's just for the people who are running the project, and we exchange documents that way. The interesting thing about it too is you can plug in a Google Doc to that. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Basecamp, but it seems that it's been working, and it's at least you put it under a single umbrella. There are other products out there that do similar things, so maybe Basecamp isn't the ideal one. But I'm not so sure that. I mean, I appreciate the fact that you're suggesting that each group is going to want some independence. I think you can achieve that with each group having its own Basecamp group, but at least it's under some place where Kaufman and you and others who are sort of trying to monitor everything will have one place to go. It's just a thought. The other is, you mentioned that you have that Facebook discussion going on with Dell and some of the others. And if you recall, back in the ESHIP conference, we were even questioning the phrase builder, or using the word builder. And that was really a large part of the discussion in terms of thinking through some of the mission, vision, and values. So be curious to see what those guys come up with too when they finish their conversation on Facebook. So, I mean, that's all I just wanted to throw out. And it's a process issue. I do have a question about the dictionary, but we can come back to that.
Okay, so while your question's on hold, and please remember, you could put it in the chat or whatever, we can refer to it. So I think that the idea of Basecamp or an Asana or a Trello or whatever it is would be great. The question comes back, in order to house anything of this volume, it is best to use something that's paid for, because while you have a free version of Basecamp, then it's not as robust as the other versions. Also, there's the learning curve, and then people wanting to utilize it. So if we're talking about a certain amount, and it's a finite amount of resources as far as equaling money that's provided for by the foundation, in particular, this particular foundation, then you have to think, is this the best use of the funds, right? Is supporting the community and working and collaborating together and offering a resource such as a Basecamp or a whatever project, is that the best use of those funds? Or is it better to use it to support pilot projects? Or is it better utilized to support whatever else, another summit, whatever? So that's a question. The other thing is that in a perfect world, we would go out and connect with organizations such as Asana, Trello, Basecamp, whatever, and say, we have couple hundred ecosystem builders that are interested in creating a field. We'd love to partner with you. Would you open up your platform to this initiative and be that national resource provider that provides this tool so that people can collaborate and coordinate? Right? I mean, that would be ideal, because then it doesn't take away from the resources, but we grow even more connectivity with organizations out there, because something like that could be considered a national resource provider, right? They, so all of these things are being worked on, they're being discussed, and we're always open to ideas and suggestions on how we can better utilize this. So until then, where, like I said, it's a draft, where there's this document that that we've been working on for the however long it's been since the last ESHIP summit, to coordinate all these things. So
Celia, all I suggest too is that when you're making this cost benefit analysis, you should also include the time value of our time too, so that the more difficult it is to support a conversation, the more it requires use of our time to sort of work around.
I will echo that. I think that,
you know, the challenges of dealing with it. So I'm not suggesting Kaufman forgets that, but I've been involved with other foundations and other things, and they're pretty good about making use of other people's time and not reward the use of that time with any sort of follow-up even. So just a point.
I'll echo that. I think that, especially for those of us like myself and Hassan, like I think that we've greatly benefited from being a part of this personally. So I'm not saying that it's like a big deal, but I think that as we move forward, like, you know, my time is usually worth like $199 an hour, like when I charge outside of what I'm doing here. And so like the cost benefit analysis of continuing to do this work without being compensated is kind of like a lot. So to be able to have like a very, very easy, simple tools to be able to continue to contribute without making it very difficult is definitely something that I think is has been echoed to me by other people who may be a little bit like scared to talk about it because they don't want to seem like they're ungrateful or whatever, but like a lot of people unload that on me. I'm just like, well, I don't work at the foundation. I can't help you. Like, you got to voice this yourself. And like Basecamp costs $1,000 a year. So, I mean, I could pay for that. I think that the foundation has enough money to pay for Basecamp. Yeah, I think that that's just like a thought that has been continually swirling, is that we have to begin now as we start working on these things. It's like everybody wants to contribute and everybody wants to do this mass collaboration, but like outside of this, we get paid quite a bit of money to do the same type of work. So we have to really think about how to make it as streamlined as possible. That's all I have.
Hassan?
I can't add anything to what Peter and Louisa said, but I agree with what they both said.
I appreciate that. So streamlined and time value is a big deal, and I'm grateful for you voicing that so that we can share it going forward. And it's not something that's gone unnoticed. And so we're going to do our very best to, I mean, the whole idea is to create this to be a field so that all of us can all get compensated, you know, professionally and personally for the work that we do. So I appreciate that. Peter, you had something you wanted to share about the Living Dictionary. So share some thoughts about that.
Just actually like some clarification on it, but the other is, so just to share another project I've been working on. So I mentioned the National Governors thing. And like I said, it's on the on-demand economy. And one of the issues in dealing with gig work and gig workers is that there are about as many definitions as there are descriptions of what people do either as a side hustle or as a main line of work that is performed either as, as an entrepreneur or, self-employed, or just simply, or not simply, but just by necessity being a day laborer or an Uber driver or whatever. And that's hampered a lot of other, this inconsistency in terms of descriptions and understandings of what that is, have hampered a lot of other issues, particularly around policymaking and even data collection. And what we learned was that as we started to explore this, there are all sorts of different dimensions to these questions. I mean, it's not only about a matter of relationships between the person and entity that's paying that individual to do something, whether it's as a 1099 or, salary or wage. And there's gig work and wage work too. I mean, it's, unstructured schedules, for example. But also who's involved, motivations, what describes the universe of activities, what industries are they working in, what occupations are these, fulfilling, what skills are required with respect to these particular kinds of gig and activities and the like. And so what we've actually done is we've actually stepped back and say, fine, let's come up with a semantic model that describes this universe. And so we've been developing something called an ontology that both describes what it is, but also establishes what the relationships are and between things, and also, where they may nestle in terms of hierarchies as you talk about taxonomies and so forth. And we think that has actually been a pretty basic precursor to developing any sort of systematic language like a dictionary, also in terms of data collection, also in terms of policy work. So a collection of terms helps in defining what those terms are, but in the absence of understanding what the relationships exist, then it doesn't, these terms don't have context. And at least in that project, we felt that it was important to understand what the context is. Now, since we're talking in terms of ecosystems, I would hazard to guess that that's probably the same with respect to this initiative as well. So I don't know where things stand on this dictionary idea, but it may be, I just had some thoughts that might either contribute to the discussion, or you may just say, well, you're wrong, and we'll go ahead and do something different. So anyway.
Oh, are you talking, Cecilia? You're muted.
No, I was going to say, Louisa, you are probably the best person to address
Okay.
Exactly what Peter said. So,
yeah. So I believe that when we were at the summit, you were in the one group about the mission and vision and values, and I was in the dictionary group. So we talked a great deal about what you just spoke about, and the context and the linguistics of words and things like that. So when we delivered our big sheet with the all of the different fields and stuff about it, I think we did our best to address that in the time that we were given, about kind of a process and a structure for this dictionary that would have a term and then have common uses for it and have some contextual background about why we as ecosystem builders are using this word to make it be applicable to our field in a certain way that may not be used contextually in the same way in some other profession or in some other field. So I don't have a picture of that sheet, but I'm sure that the foundation, you guys have those sheets somewhere. And I guess when I move forward with that, my thought is that, and this is something that I think that we continue, a challenge that we may continue to run into as we move forward with these initiatives. And I don't think it's a bad challenge, but when we get together, or even when we have like a jillion people like at the summit, and they go and self-select the thing that they want to work on, and they work on it, and then they are made aware of another initiative, and they're like, oh, I have a better way of doing that, but we have already taken 15 steps forward in that initiative. I'm not entirely sure what the answer is for that, right? Like Peter, we worked on the thing at the summit, and like Peter may have a better way of doing it, but like we already did what we did, right? Like that's kind of a challenge that I think that we may have with a lot of these types of initiatives. And I don't really know exactly what to do about it. I have to think about that. But yeah, so I think that we've addressed kind of there's a very small group. I was thinking only like 3 or 4 people working on that particular initiative at the summit.
Would it help? I mean, like I said, I mean, this thing may be further. I mean, you may be farther along. I mean, excuse me, you may be down a path that makes it difficult to change, which is perfectly acceptable. I'm not trying to ask you to reinvent stuff. I'm happy to share with you what we, as an example, what we were doing on the on-demand side thing. It's actually, we used MindNode as a way of describing that and sort of establishing relationships. So if it's of any help, so that people could, maybe take some of those lessons that we're learning from there as you're developing your own dictionary at the source, which is the other piece of it, then this may or may not be useful. But
I
I'm
think it
happy to share it.
would be useful for whatever entity is actually developed. Like Louisa Shepherd is not developing that whole thing, because Louisa Shepherd is not getting paid to develop that whole thing. However, there should be an entity that is doing that based on the recommendations that we made as a community. And I think it would be helpful for that entity or group of people to actually do it. But I think that our job is to facilitate and to just, like, as you said, bring to bear different and better ideas, or different and better ways of achieving it, and then to share with whoever is actually developing those things.
Yeah. So Cecilia, why don't I'll send that to you, and then you decide whether it's useful in any other context, and we go from there.
Okay, I can definitely share out, and and I think that's the whole idea of this dashboard, right? So the dashboard, if we can get it to house at least the projects that were introduced or built on, so the things that happened pre-summit, those initiatives go on that dashboard, as well as the initiatives that were proposed at the summit, and then any new ones, so that it just becomes a living document as things progress. We're hoping that they get updated, and then people can weigh in and comment and share on that. So that's the whole visibility, alignment, coordination thing. So as you're glancing through this dashboard and you say, wow, so we're using this tool on an initiative that we do, and in my professional world, that may help, that you, like, this conversation actually happens, right, without us getting on the call to do it. I think the purpose in talking about these things on a call is that you put a face to the name, you have somebody who you can refer back to engage. If you don't know who they are, then that's what currently Christine and I are the people that go, hey, so who was that said the thing, and how do I get in touch with them? Like, we don't want to be the bottleneck. So also telling people what you're working on and contributing to the work is also helpful, and then how it supports you. So Peter, also as an aside, I would love to, if you can share with me some of the context on that, so that I can bring it to the people that are working on the governor's initiative for economic development, entrepreneurship in my state. I think it would be great, and hopefully they can become part of what the initiatives are that you're working on. And heck, Lord knows, if they're already doing that, that's also good for us to know about on the ground. So
sure, I'll have it send it to you, and then we can sort out how do you want to use it. That'd be great.
That's great, and I'm very glad that I think you got to speak at something in Chicago. I don't know if you there was a lunch panel or something a month ago or two
Oh,
that
on Illinois Farm?
maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope that was beneficial. I
Yeah,
know
it
that
was.
they
I
were
mean, yeah,
very.
it was around future of work. And so that's our general area of work, has been on looking at issues of futures of work. Obviously, entrepreneurship plays a large role in that. So yeah, well, that was what that particular work panel was about, was on.
Yeah.
We were
Yeah, we
talking about
couldn't.
Illinois Farm.
You were the perfect person to talk to about it. Plus, you happen to be there or be in town, so
Yeah.
that's much easier. If anybody is interested in future of work in farming or agriculture, there's a really cool agripreneur conference taking place in Greece in September. So if you have any interest in that, I'm happy to share about that. I will probably put it in the Facebook page.
I got
No.
I got the right last name for that.
Yes, you do. You should go in. I think that would be very cool. I told them thinking about going to Greece in September is like, and Louisa, you said you had some openings.
I know. I'm like, sounds like a great opportunity.
It is a great opportunity. So I think that's also the purpose of calls like this, right? So that you find out and you have these intersections and opportunities. So hopefully it's of benefit. But I think speaking to what several people have said, if we have project focused calls, there will always be people to onboard and people that are new to the discussion, and hopefully at least for the next little while we can support new people coming in and share with them opportunities to get connected.
So my understanding is that next steps are that you'll sort out a way to get the materials from the ESHIP conference onto some sort of platform so that we all can start. Well, you put it in the dashboard, but get into some sort of platform that we can all start working collectively and collaboratively on those resources.
That's
Okay.
the hope. So in fact, I will thank you for the base camp pricing.
It's not the pricing that I think is interesting, but it's like the fact that you don't have to pay per user, which is interesting. So
yes,
I think that would be a good idea. I know people have their thoughts, but I think that particular page makes some good points. So I wanted to share that.
So let's see if we can, because the last thing we want to do in creating a field of ecosystem building is to create a new tool. Like, we should not have to recreate the wheel every single time. So let's utilize some of the practices and some of the tools that are out there so that we can move forward and maximize our time and energy, right? So.
Hi, Celia.
Yes,
this is Hassan. I'm going to have to jump off the call. I apologize.
No, you're fine.
Bye, Hassan.
Okay. Bye, Hassan. We'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Take care.
So, take care. So yeah, I think it's all those things. So we're getting closer. The idea is, I think what all of us are doing, I think Victor said, is like we're all pushing the flywheel just a little bit. And as we keep pushing the flywheel, it's picking up some momentum. And the hope is that the flywheel just keeps moving and we'll be able to back up a little bit from it and have it keep revolving. So thanks for all helping to push forward the flywheel just a little bit more. I'm going to give you back 10 minutes of your day. And I appreciate your time. Thank you for your time and your energy and your enthusiasm and all those things. As Peter shares, I will share with Louisa and Hassan about the work that you're doing. Any questions for me?
No, I'm good.
No, just have a wonderful Wednesday.
Have a wonderful Wednesday.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Cecilia.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.